humans. Today I'm going to give you my semester wrap-up. These are all the books that I read from September to January. Since I had classes and exams, there aren't much, but still I'm quite proud of myself because I read quite a lot of books during the time that I was revising. Since I did cycles of 30-minute work and 10-minute reading, it got me through a lot of books. So I'm quite proud of myself. So I started off after having had an exam at the beginning of September, and I had just read Lord of the Rings and I wanted to read something new, and so many people had told me about the Aragon series and how they were amazing, and they told me, well, since you like dragons, you'll love this one. So I tried it out. Okay, so the Aragon series starts with, well, the first book, Aragon, who is about this boy, this farm boy, Aragon, who stumbles upon a dragon egg. He doesn't know it's a dragon egg until, well, the egg hatches and there's a dragon out of it. So he starts to take care of the dragon, but things get really ugly really fast because the emperor, who is also a dragon rider, wants the egg for himself. That is, well, the basic plot of the book. Eventually, a friendship develops between Aragon and the dragon, who is called Zafira. The first book was good. It is slow-paced though. One of my problems with this series is that Zafira doesn't act like a dragon. I mean, she doesn't feel like a real character since she doesn't have any development. She never has any ideas. The only thing we know she loves is flying and Aragon. These are the only things she cares about. And that is a little sad considering that Aragon has loads of interests. I mean, he has fallen in love, he has dreams and hopes, and he loves his family and everything. And I mean, Aragon's life is so full of so many interests and people, and I don't know. She just feels like an augmented dog. I mean, she can talk, but she doesn't say much. She follows Aragon, but she doesn't even care about the world at stake. It's hard to like her because, well, she's not even a real character. Dragons have a language, a culture, and everything. Considering I love dragons and I have met characters who are dragons and can do all the same things Zafira can, but still have a personality, this feels a little disappointing. That's the only thing I have against this book, but it's not a very important problem because Zafira still is an important character and she still has some stuff to do, even though I would have loved to see more of what she could be. Her two interests aren't enough for me. That is the only thing. I liked this book, even though it's slow-paced. The problem started with the second book, which I'm not going to summarize for you, just for the sake of spoilers. In The Eldest, we follow two perspectives. The perspective of Aragon, which is beyond interesting, and the perspective of his cousin Rowan, which I always want to call Rohan.
Got knuckles for 8! And Rohan will answer.
For some reason. The problem I had while reading is that I didn't really care about his cousin Rowan because he's not as interesting as Aragon. I mean, it's sad, but like, yeah, he doesn't have anything special. He's not a dragon rider. While so many things happen to Aragon, the things that happen to Rowan are kind of side effects. The story was well developed, but I knew what was going to happen. As soon as they had a plan, I knew what was going to happen. The thing was, every time we had to go back to Rowan's perspective, I would sigh because I didn't want to know about Rowan. All of his adventures are kind of useless to the main plot. So I would have preferred if Rowan's story had been told in retrospective, just like as a story, so I did this and this and this, and that would have been interesting, but not like as a good half of the book, it's not as interesting as what Aragon goes through. But I still like this book, even though like Rowan was kind of boring. He was still a kind of likable character. But now we come to Brisinger. I don't know how to pronounce it differently. This book was honestly because there is one thing that happens in the beginning, one thing that happens in the end, and in the middle, nothing. Nothing happens. Rowan's story is beyond useless. In the second book, he had a goal, and in the third one, he doesn't have any. Just stuff happens to him that don't change anything to the story or to his predicament. Nothing. That was why I couldn't go on to the fourth book, because this one was so boring. I don't know what happened. Maybe they wanted to make 4 books instead of just 3, because you could have skipped so many things. So many chapters were just useless. The thing is, we wanted Aragon to do something since the end of the second book, and it takes the whole book for him to do that. That was just so frustrating. I was practically screaming for the whole book, just go and do it. And he was taking his time. So yeah, I couldn't. Nothing happened in the middle of this book. Nothing. And I couldn't stand it. So after reading this, I got into such a reading slump. I didn't know what a reading slump was until I read this book. And I just couldn't go on with the fourth book because I couldn't stand the characters, because they had waited so long to do something that was prophesized in the first book. And it took an eternity. I mean, I knew everything that was going to happen because I guessed it, because everyone guessed it. But they still took the whole book to take place. Things you know what will happen in the end of the second book. You know they will happen because, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but they don't take place until the end of the third book. And I mean, this is not a short book. It's like 700 pages. 700 pages where I'm waiting for Aragon to do something. I didn't like this book. I couldn't go on with the fourth one. I will one day finish this fourth book just to get it over with. I think it still has some potential to be interesting, but still, that was pretty frustrating. So afterwards, I got into a reading slump. I started many books, but I couldn't find any interest in them. So I decided to pick up a book that I found just one day. We saw a book fair with my best friend, and we decided to just go there and see what we could find. And so I found The Labyrinth by Kate Moss. It was originally written in English, so you will still find this book. But since it deals with the city of Carcassonne, and both of the main characters are French, I think I have the right to read the translation in French. The story follows 2 women, one in 2005 whose name is Alice, and one in 1209 whose name is Anaïs. This is a mystery historical fiction that takes place during the Crusades and in French in the city of Carcassonne. Alice, who lives in 2005, is an archaeologist, and she stumbles upon 2 skeletons in a cave, and she finds mysterious drawings, and Anaïs receives a mission from her father. He gives her a certain book that is very important that he needs her to keep safe, and it has some religious meaning we don't really know. So that's how the 2 stories begin. We navigate between different portraits, different people, and the mystery is so well done that even with like 3/4 of the book, I didn't know what it was about, but it was so interesting. Both Alice and Anaïs are very relatable characters, And even though Alice is at a time where women didn't really have rights or anything, she still was able to fight for herself, and that was very pleasing to see. We kind of see that the two stories of these two women, even though they are separated by time, are kind of linked, and there are parallels. They both have those strange dreams that kind of link them together. And since I love the city of Carcassonne, this was the occasion to learn about the history of the city. And this history was so very interesting. I mean, this book is perfect. It's exactly what I like in mystery and historical fiction at the same time, because you actually get to live history through the characters, not just learn about it through some dates and stuff. Well, that has happened, but I can understand why, and it's only like a short section of it where we get the dates and stuff. We actually care for the characters, unlike The Last Templar, where we didn't care about any of the characters, past or present. We actually care for these women, and we want them to succeed in what they want. The parallels between the past and the present are extremely interesting, and in a mystery point of view, you really want to know who's who and what's going to happen and what is going on. I loved this book, and that was exactly what I needed after my reading slump. So when I went back in France for Christmas, I finished The Labyrinth, and I immediately started Batman, a comic book I wasn't intending on reading. Then I saw it and I was like, why not? I don't know if this is a good translation, but this is the first one in the Court of Owls. It's made of 5 comic books, and I really loved this comic book. I'm not a comic book reader. It's like the first time I've read a comic book. So this story follows, well, Batman, who tracks a killer who names himself the Owl and wants to kill Bruce Wayne. Yeah, and he uncovers secrets that have been buried deep within Gotham, and it's really, really interesting. Yeah, and it's, well, Batman, so it's always good. I liked the drawings, and I liked how they managed to put an atmosphere in the stories. I mean, at one point they needed to reflect a growing madness, and they did it by turning the perspective of the drawings. You actually had to turn the book to be able to continue the story and read the images in the right order. And that was really fun to read. I mean, I was impressed. I suppose it's a common thing, but since it was my first time reading a comic book, I was agreeably surprised. Sadly, we don't have the rest of the series, and I am quite frustrated about that because I want to know what happens next. But yeah, that was a really good comic book. I recommend it. So then it was Christmas, and I got a couple of books for Christmas, which are the Witcher series. So the first book tells the story of Geralt, who is a Witcher, which means he is a human that has been subjected to mutations that have given him extra strength and velocity and many attributes which make him extremely powerful. And so Witchers are supposed to kill monsters for money. The first book, it is quite small. It tells the story of Geralt and how he became who he is, and they explain how the world works, and we meet all the characters that are going to be crucial for the rest of the series, and it gives some insight into who exactly Geralt is. I had played the video game before, The Witcher 3, and I was very interested in reading the books, because, well, if there are books and the video game is amazing, why shouldn't you read it? I was a bit confused at first because there is a main story and many flashbacks. Since I read it in French, I can't really translate the chapters, but La Voix de la Raison is the chapter which is in the present, and all of the others are flashbacks. So I read the first 4 books in the series. There are 7 in total, plus 1 random stories. And I was quite surprised because, I mean, I was revising when I was reading these books. The 4th book was a little bit too long in my opinion. Nothing really happened. I know that was the purpose of it, but still, we feel like Geralt is wasting his time, but he is feeling that as well. It was a bit boring. I was kind of waiting for something to happen. And since it was the purpose of the whole thing, that was kind of understandable. Since these books wanted to make me replay The Witcher 3, I decided to purchase the first game, The Witcher, and see what they kept from the books, what they changed, because from what I've read, nothing looks like what happens in The Witcher 3. I don't know. Yeah, I really like them, even though the world is so cynical and contemptuous, and the world is so sexist, and that is quite hard to read, especially when you follow Ciri, who is a little girl, and she goes through some harsh stuff. But since there are these witches, which is different from Witcher, these witches who are very powerful and manipulate kings and stuff, it kind of makes it up for the complete sexist world around them. The thing is, we meet some characters who aren't cynical and who aren't just egotistical and just want to survive without doing any good in the world. So the obvious answer is Geralt, who is a very nice and kind person, and that is so heartwarming and also just heartbreaking because so many people are so mean to him, and he bears it all and he takes it in his stride, and I'm just like, poor Geralt. I really love these books and I can't wait to continue on with the series. So let me know if you have read these books and what you've thought of these books. Tell me if Inheritance, the last book in the Aragon series, is worth it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!